The human sat in the center of the interrogation chamber like she owned the place. Which, considering she was strapped to a chair surrounded by the finest military minds of the Galactic Coalition, showed either remarkable confidence or complete insanity. I was leaning toward insanity, personally. My name is Director Kelux of the Zenthari Intelligence Division, and I've been interrogating prisoners for longer than most species have been spacefaring. I know how to break minds, extract secrets, and make even the most stubborn creatures sing like Avalonian songbirds. But this human, this small, unremarkable female with short black hair and green eyes, she was just sitting there, humming, like this was some sort of pleasant social gathering instead of a high-security interrogation. Subject designation Alpha 79, I announced for the recording devices. Captured during the raid on the Proxima Research Station. Species, human. Name, unknown. Cooperation level, 0. The human stopped humming and looked up at me with those peculiar green eyes. Actually, she said in perfectly clear Galactic standard, my name is Quinn Foster. And I wouldn't say my cooperation level is 0. I'm cooperating beautifully with gravity right now. I felt my tentacles twitch with annoyance. Humans and their bizarre sense of humor. Miss Foster, I continued, you were found in possession of classified Zenthari military codes, detailed schematics of our defense networks, and enough encrypted data to compromise half our fleet operations. Care to explain? Quinn shrugged as much as the restraints allowed. Wrong place, wrong time, bad luck, cosmic irony. Commander Vex of the Coalition Security Force leaned forward from his position at the observation table. His forearms were folded in what I recognized as his "this is serious business" pose. Miss Foster, he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. We know you're part of a human intelligence operation. We know your people have been infiltrating Coalition facilities for months. What we want to know is how. How what? Quinn asked innocently. How you're getting past our security systems. How you're decrypting our communications. How you're staying one step ahead of our counterintelligence operations. Quinn tilted her head thoughtfully. Have you considered that maybe your security just isn't very good? The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Commander Vex's forearms slowly unfolded. Our security systems, he said with the kind of quiet menace that usually made prisoners confess everything they'd ever done wrong, were designed by the finest minds in the galaxy. They are mathematically unbreachable. Mathematically unbreachable, Quinn repeated thoughtfully. That's a lovely phrase. Very confident, very absolute, very wrong. Dr. Yilan, our chief xenolinguist, activated her recording equipment from the corner of the room. She was a Sarathi, all flowing, tentacles and bioluminescent patches, and she'd been studying human communication patterns for decades. Miss Foster, she interjected, we'd like to run some linguistic analysis tests, standard procedure for first contact with new species. First contact? Quinn laughed. Lady, your people have been shooting at my people for 6 months. I think we're well past first contact. Nevertheless, Dr. Yilan continued smoothly, we'd like to establish a baseline for human communication patterns. We're going to give you a standard universal translator and see how well it handles your language. She approached Quinn's chair and attached a small device to her collar. The universal translator was a marvel of coalition engineering, capable of processing and converting thousands of known languages in real time. There, Dr. Yilan said, stepping back. Now please say something in your native language. Quinn looked around the room at all of us watching her with professional interest. Then she opened her mouth and spoke. The words that came out made my blood freeze in my veins. Keth var nul thane. Varmuth kela surdan. The universal translator, that miracle of technology that had never failed to process any known language, simply displayed unknown language, unable to translate. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was that I understood every word she'd said, and according to every historical record in the Coalition database, that language had been extinct for over 3,000 years. Dr. Yilan's bioluminescent patches were flashing in patterns I'd never seen before. Commander Vex had gone completely still, all 4 of his arms frozen in mid-gesture. Even the guard by the door, a normally unflappable Korlan warrior, had taken a step backward. "That's impossible," Dr. Yilan whispered. Quinn looked around the room with growing interest. Oh, I said something wrong, didn't I? "Where did you learn that language?" I demanded, my voice coming out higher than I'd intended. "What language?" Quinn asked. "I was just speaking standard human English." "No," Commander Vex said slowly. "You were not." The silence in the room was so complete I could hear the hum of the air recycling systems. "Miss Foster," I said carefully, "the language you just spoke, it's called Old Zenthari. It's the ancient ceremonial language of my people. It hasn't been spoken in 3 millennia. Quinn blinked. "That's weird. I'm pretty sure I was speaking English." Dr. Yilan was frantically adjusting her equipment. "The translator is functioning normally. It's processing her neural patterns as standard human linguistic output. But what we're hearing is Old Zenthari," I finished. "Perfect, fluent Old Zenthari." "Okay," Quinn said slowly. "That's definitely weird. But maybe there's a simple explanation. Maybe your translator is broken?" "The translator doesn't malfunction," Commander Vex stated. "It's been tested on over 40,000 species. It has never failed to identify a known language." "But Old Zenthari isn't a known language anymore," Dr. Yilan added. "The linguistic patterns were lost when the old empire fell. The only records we have are partial fragments in historical archives." Quinn was starting to look genuinely concerned. "So you're telling me that I'm somehow speaking a dead alien language that I've never heard of, but I think I'm speaking English?" "That's exactly what we're telling you," I said. "Well," Quinn said after a moment, "that's not ominous at all." I activated my personal communicator. "This is Director Kalux. I need immediate consultation with the Historical Archives Division, Priority Alpha." "Director," came the reply. "Archives Division is currently restricted access. What's the nature of your inquiry?" "I need everything we have on Old Zenthari linguistic patterns, immediately." "Sir, that information is classified at the highest levels. I'll need authorization from—" "You'll get your authorization," I snapped. "Just get me the files." I turned back to Quinn, who was watching this exchange with obvious curiosity. "Miss Foster," I said, "I'm going to ask you to speak again. This time, try to say something specific." "Like what?" "Tell me your name and where you're from." Quinn shrugged. "Okay. My name is Quinn Foster, and I'm from Earth." What came out of her mouth was, "Neth Kalar Quinn Foster, Vel Suradan Earth Keth." The universal translator still showed unknown language, unable to translate. But every Zenthari in the room understood it perfectly. "This shouldn't be possible," Dr. Yilan muttered, her tentacles writhing with agitation. "Humans have no contact with Old Zenthari. The language died before their species even developed spaceflight." "Maybe," Commander Vex suggested, "this is some kind of human technological trick, a way to confuse our translation systems." "With what?" I asked. "Some kind of linguistic virus that converts their speech patterns into a language they couldn't possibly know? That's absurd." "Is it more absurd than a human spontaneously speaking perfect Old Zenthari?" He had a point. My communicator buzzed. "Director Kalux, we've located the Old Zenthari linguistic files. However, there's something you should know." "What?" "The files are sealed under Historical Preservation Protocol 77 Alpha. The authorization codes are—" "Are what?" "Are themselves written in Old Zenthari, sir. We can't read them." I stared at the device in my hand. "You're telling me that the files about an ancient language are locked behind a code written in that same ancient language?" "Yes, sir. It appears to be some kind of recursive security system." "Well, that's just perfect," I muttered. Quinn had been listening to this conversation with growing amusement. "You know," she said, "I might be able to help with that." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well, if I'm somehow speaking this Old Zenthari thing, maybe I can read it too." The suggestion was so outrageous that it took me a moment to process it. You want us to give classified historical files to a human prisoner so she can translate her own impossible linguistic abilities? When you put it like that, Quinn said with a grin, it does sound pretty crazy. Commander Vex was shaking his head. Absolutely not. We don't hand classified information to enemy agents. Enemy agents who apparently speak a language that died before your oldest grandfather was born, Quinn pointed out. I mean, what are the odds that this is some kind of elaborate human spy plot that just happens to involve resurrecting ancient Zenthari linguistics? Higher than you might think, Commander Vex replied grimly. Really? You think humans somehow learned a dead language that you don't even remember, just to confuse your translators during interrogations? Put that way, it did sound fairly ridiculous. Dr. Yilan had been quiet during this exchange, but now she spoke up. Director, there might be another explanation. I'm listening. What if the language isn't actually dead? I felt my tentacles curl with confusion. What do you mean? What if old Zenthari survived somehow? What if there are still speakers of the language somewhere in the galaxy? That's impossible, Commander Vex said immediately. The old empire was completely destroyed. Every world, every colony, every outpost, nothing survived. Nothing that we know of, Dr. Yilan corrected. But what if something did? What if there were survivors who maintained the old ways, the old language? The implications of that suggestion were staggering. You're talking about a lost colony of ancient Zenthari, I said slowly. A group that's been hidden for 3,000 years. And somehow made contact with humans, Quinn added helpfully, which would explain how I learned it. Except, Commander Vex pointed out, you said you don't remember learning it. Quinn's expression grew thoughtful. No, I don't. Which is also weird now that I think about it. She paused, her green eyes taking on a distant look. Actually, there is something. But it's going to sound crazy. Crazier than spontaneously speaking a dead language? I asked. Fair point. Quinn took a breath. I've been having dreams, for about 6 months now. Dreams about, I don't know, ancient cities, strange architecture, and voices speaking in a language I couldn't understand. The timing made my blood run cold. 6 months ago, I said slowly, was when human infiltration activities began. And when the first reports of security breaches started, Commander Vex added. And, Dr. Yilan said quietly, when we lost contact with Deep Space Observatory Gamma 9. We all looked at each other. Deep Space Observatory. Gamma 9 was located on the edge of the Forbidden Zone, the region of space where the old Zenthari Empire had once thrived, and where no coalition ship had traveled in over a millennium. The region that was officially designated as completely lifeless and uninhabitable. Miss Foster, I said carefully, these dreams of yours. Can you describe the voices? Quinn closed her eyes, concentrating. Deep voices. Multiple speakers, but they seemed to be chanting in unison, like some kind of ritual or ceremony. She opened her eyes and looked directly at me. The weird thing is, in the dreams, I understood what they were saying, but when I woke up I couldn't remember the words. Until now, Dr. Yilan observed. Until now, Quinn agreed. I was beginning to suspect that Quinn Foster was not just a human prisoner. She was the key to something much larger and much more dangerous than any of us had realized. Commander Vex, I said, I think we need to contact High Command. On what grounds? On the grounds that we may have just stumbled across evidence that the old Zenthari Empire isn't as dead as we thought. Quinn looked between us with growing alarm. Excuse me, but what exactly does that mean for me? I looked at her with something that might have been sympathy. Miss Foster, I said, I think you're about to become the most important prisoner in Coalition history. Great, she muttered. Just great. High Command's response to my emergency report came faster than a plasma bolt to the face, which is to say, uncomfortably fast and potentially lethal. Within 3 hours, our modest interrogation facility had been transformed into what could charitably be called a multilateral diplomatic incident waiting to happen. The corridor outside our interrogation chamber now hosted representatives from 7 different coalition species, 3 independent observers from the Galactic Court, and 1 very nervous-looking intern who kept taking notes on everything everyone said. Quinn, for her part, seemed to be enjoying the attention. "So," she said, addressing the room full of alien dignitaries like she was hosting a dinner party, "I take it my linguistic situation has caused something of a stir." High Admiral Torvin, the Coalition's supreme military commander, and a Corlon with scars that told stories of 100 battles, stepped forward, his 6 eyes fixed on Quinn with the intensity of a targeting computer. "Miss Foster," he rumbled in a voice like distant thunder, "do you understand the implications of what you've demonstrated?" "Well," Quinn replied thoughtfully, "I'm guessing it's not good news for me." Dr. Yelan, who had been running linguistic analysis for the past 3 hours, activated a holographic display that filled the room with swirling patterns of phonetic data. "The linguistic patterns are perfect," she announced to the assembled dignitaries. "Not just fluent, but native-level proficiency in Old Zenthari. Grammar, syntax, tonal variations, even dialectical quirks that we've only seen in the most ancient texts." High Admiral Torvin's mandibles clicked together in what I recognized as deep thought. "How long would it take to learn this language to such proficiency?" he asked. "For a typical, organic mind." Dr. Yelan consulted her data. "Assuming perfect conditions, unlimited resources, and the finest teachers available, approximately 40 to 50 years. "I'm 28, Quinn said helpfully. "Which means," I interjected, "she would have had to start learning Old Zenthari before she was born." The silence that followed was the kind of silence that civilizations fall into right before they realize their fundamental assumptions about the universe are wrong. Ambassador Lith of the Sarathi Council, a being of such advanced age that she remembered when stars currently burning had been nothing but cosmic dust, spoke with the weight of millennia behind her words. "There is another possibility," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself seem to vibrate with significance. "Which is?" High Admiral Torvin asked. "The knowledge was not learned, it was inherited." The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. "Inherited how?" I demanded. Ambassador Lith gestured toward Quinn with one of her many crystalline appendages. "What if this human carries within her genetic structure the linguistic patterns of Old Zenthari?" "That's biologically impossible," Dr. Yelan protested. "Languages aren't encoded in DNA." "Aren't they?" Ambassador Lith replied. "We know that some species pass complex information through genetic memory. The Astrani navigate by inherited star maps. The Kalari are born knowing the songs of their ancestors." Quinn was looking between us with growing alarm. Excuse me, but are you suggesting that I'm somehow genetically part alien?" "Not part alien," Ambassador Lith corrected. "Part ancient alien." High Admiral Torvin's 6 eyes swiveled to focus on her. "Explain." "The old Zenthari Empire was vast. They colonized thousands of worlds, encountered hundreds of species. What if, in their expansion, they made contact with early humans? The implications were staggering." "You're talking about first contact between Zenthari and humans 3,000 years ago," I said slowly. "Before humans achieved spaceflight," Commander Vex added. "Before humans even knew other species existed," Dr. Yelan whispered. Quinn held up her hand. Wait. You're saying that ancient aliens visited Earth and somehow programmed my ancestors with their language?" "Not programmed," Ambassador Lith said. "Integrated. What if the old Zenthari didn't just make contact with humans? What if they formed bonds with them?" The word she used in the original Sirathi carried implications that didn't translate well into Galactic standard. Bonds that went beyond alliance, beyond friendship, beyond even family. "Genetic integration," I breathed. "A joining of species," Ambassador Lith confirmed. "The old Zenthari were known for their willingness to adapt, to incorporate useful traits from other species into their own genetic structure. What if they found something in early humans that they considered valuable?" "Like what?" Quinn asked. High Admiral Torvin answered with surprising gentleness. "Adaptability. Creativity. The ability to thrive in environments that would kill most other species. And in return, Ambassador Lith continued, they left something of themselves in your genetic line. Language, perhaps. Cultural memory. Knowledge that would remain dormant until the right trigger activated it. Quinn's face had gone pale. What kind of trigger? I felt my tentacles curl with a terrible certainty. Proximity to active old Zenthari linguistic patterns. Deep Space Observatory Gamma 9, Commander Vex said grimly. Dr. Yelan activated another holographic display, this one showing a star map of the Forbidden Zone. 6 months ago, she said, Observatory Gamma 9 detected unusual energy signatures from this region, patterns that didn't match any known natural phenomena. The display zoomed in on a specific area of space that every coalition member had been taught to avoid. The last transmission from Gamma 9 was a fragmentary message. They reported detecting structured emissions that resembled linguistic patterns. They found someone speaking Old Zenthari, I realized. And when those transmissions reached Earth, Ambassador Lith added, they activated dormant genetic programming in humans who carry Old Zenthari heritage. Quinn stared at the star map. So there are others like me? We don't know, High Admiral Torvin admitted. You're the first human we've encountered with this ability. Lucky me, Quinn muttered. Miss Foster, I said, the dreams you mentioned. Can you remember any specific details now? Quinn closed her eyes, concentrating. When she spoke again, it was in Old Zenthari, but the universal translator finally managed a partial translation. The untranslatable calls to those who carry the untranslatable gift. The time of untranslatable approaches, and the untranslatable must untranslatable, or all will be untranslatable. Well, Commander Vex observed, that's not ominous at all. Dr. Yelan was frantically analyzing the speech patterns. The untranslatable terms, they're not just vocabulary gaps, they're concepts that don't exist in any modern language. Concepts specific to Old Zenthari culture, Ambassador Lith noted. Ideas that died with the Empire. Quinn opened her eyes. I can understand what I'm saying when I speak it, but when I try to translate it into English, the concepts just don't fit. Because, I said with growing certainty, those concepts describe things that modern civilization has forgotten. High Admiral Torvin activated his secure communicator. This is Admiral Torvin to Fleet Command. I need immediate authorization for a reconnaissance mission to the Forbidden Zone. Sir, came the reply. Regulations strictly prohibit any coalition vessel from entering that region. Then we'll need to change the regulations, he said grimly. We have evidence of active Old Zenthari presence in the zone. The communicator was silent for so long I thought the connection had been lost. Sir, the voice finally came back. Did you say active presence? I did. Admiral, we're going to need a full briefing. And sir, High Command wants to speak with the human. Quinn perked up at this. Finally, someone who wants to have a conversation instead of just staring at me like I'm some kind of cosmic puzzle. Miss Foster, High Admiral Torvin said carefully, I should warn you that High Command's conversations tend to be rather intense. More intense than finding out I'm part ancient alien? Much more intense. The briefing with High Command took place via quantum-encrypted holographic conference. The assembled leaders of the Galactic Coalition materialized around our interrogation chamber as translucent figures, their combined presence making the room feel like the center of galactic civilization. Chancellor Prime Nex of the Core World spoke first, her multiple heads turning to focus on Quinn from different angles. Miss Foster, we understand you've been experiencing dreams that may be communications from the Forbidden Zone. That seems to be the working theory, Quinn replied. We need you to attempt active communication. Quinn blinked. Come again? Dr. Yelan stepped forward. We want you to try to respond to the dreams, to initiate contact with whatever's out there. You want me to talk to ancient aliens in a dead language through my dreams? Quinn asked incredulously. Yes, Chancellor Prime Nex said simply. That's either the most important scientific breakthrough in galactic history, or the fastest way to get me killed by cosmic horror beyond comprehension. Probably both, High Admiral Torvin admitted. Quinn looked around the room at all the expectant faces. And if I refuse? Then we'll never know if the old Zenthari Empire truly survived, Ambassador Lith said. And if they did survive, we'll never know what they want. Or whether they're a threat to current galactic civilization, Chancellor Prime Nex added. Quinn was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, it was with the kind of resigned determination that I'd seen in soldiers facing impossible odds. All right, she said. Let's talk to some ancient aliens. Dr. Yelan began setting up monitoring equipment around Quinn's chair. We'll track all your biological functions during the attempt. If anything goes wrong, we can bring you out of it. Define goes wrong, Quinn requested. Catastrophic neural feedback, consciousness displacement, or spontaneous combustion, Dr. Yelan listed matter-of-factly. Oh, good, Quinn said. For a minute there, I was worried this might be dangerous. As the monitoring systems came online and Quinn prepared to make conscious contact with whatever was calling to her from the Forbidden Zone, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to change the galaxy forever. Whether for better or worse remained to be seen. Quinn closed her eyes, took a breath, and began to speak in Old Zenthari. The words that came out were like nothing we'd heard before, complex and flowing with an authority that seemed to reach across the centuries. For several minutes, nothing happened. Quinn continued her rhythmic chanting, the ancient syllables filling the room with an almost hypnotic cadence. Dr. Yelan's monitoring equipment showed normal readings, though Quinn's brain activity was unlike anything we'd seen in a standard humanoid species. Then the temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees in the span of 3 seconds. Every piece of electronic equipment in the chamber began displaying the same symbol, a complex geometric pattern that hurt to look at directly. The lights flickered in sequence, creating patterns that seemed almost like Morse code, if Morse code were designed by beings who thought in 12 dimensions. And Quinn's voice changed. It was still her voice, but layered now with harmonics that shouldn't have been possible for a human throat to produce. The old Zenthari words she spoke carried weight, as if each syllable was carved from solid matter and dropped into reality. Kethmoran velthara nulkada, Seren dothmakar thulaven kethnari. The universal translator, which had been stubbornly displaying unknown language for hours, suddenly flickered to life with a translation that made my blood freeze. The covenant remains unbroken. We have waited for our children to return home. High Admiral Torvin's 6 eyes went wide. Children? Quinn's head turned toward him, but her eyes remained closed. When she spoke again, it was in perfect galactic standard, but with that same otherworldly harmonic layering. The humans who carry our gift, the descendants of the first joining, we have watched them grow, spread among the stars, become strong. Now the time of reunion approaches. Chancellor Prime Nex leaned forward, her multiple heads conferring with each other in whispered tones before speaking. Who are you? What do you want? We are the Kethmoran, the first builders, those you call the old Zenthari. We want what we have always wanted, to preserve knowledge, to nurture growth, to guide the young races toward wisdom. The old empire fell 3,000 years ago, Ambassador Lith stated. Quinn's expression, even with her eyes closed, somehow managed to convey ancient amusement. The empire of conquest fell. The empire of knowledge endures. We learned from our mistakes, retreated to the deep places, and waited for a better time. Dr. Yelan checked her readings frantically. Her neural activity is off the charts, but she's stable. Whatever's happening, it's not harming her. Yet, Commander Vex added grimly. The voice speaking through Quinn seemed to hear him. We mean no harm to our daughter child, Quinn, nor to any of her species. Humans carry within them the best of what we once were. Curiosity, adaptability, the willingness to forge bonds across species barriers. What do you want from the Coalition? High Admiral Torvin demanded. Nothing from the Coalition. Everything from the humans. The distinction was not lost on anyone in the room. Explain, I said. The current galactic order is built on fear, on the assumption that strength comes from separation, from maintaining barriers between species. Humans prove this wrong. They bond easily, Adapt quickly. Integrate, rather than dominate. Quinn's head tilted slightly, as if listening to something none of us could hear. The old ways of conquest and empire building are ending. A new age approaches, one where cooperation replaces domination. Humans will lead this transition, but they will need guidance from those who learned wisdom through failure. And if we refuse this guidance? Chancellor Prime Nex asked. The room's temperature dropped another 10 degrees. Refusal is not an option for humans carrying the gift. The genetic integration runs too deep. But the choice belongs to humanity as a whole. Quinn's breathing began to quicken, and Dr. Yelin called out, "I'm seeing stress indicators. Whatever this is, it's taking a toll." The voice responded immediately. "We withdraw now, to preserve our daughter-child's well-being. But know this, gathered leaders of the coalition, the Forbidden Zone will not remain forbidden much longer. Change comes whether you welcome it or resist it." Quinn's eyes snapped open, and she gasped as if surfacing from deep water. The strange harmonics vanished from her voice, the temperature returned to normal, and the geometric symbols faded from our displays. "Did that actually happen?" she asked weakly. "Or did I just have the weirdest out-of-body experience in galactic history?" "It happened," I assured her. Quinn looked around the room at the faces of beings who had just witnessed first contact with a civilization thought extinct for millennia. "So," she said with a shaky laugh, "I guess I'm not just a prisoner anymore." "No," High Admiral Torvin said gravely. "You're an ambassador."